The vast emptiness of space stretched before Captain Trell as he stood on the bridge of the Celestial Seeker, flagship of the Stellar Concorde's 14th exploration fleet. His four eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of his growing impatience. For 3 cycles they had been mapping this uncharted sector with nothing to show but space dust and unremarkable asteroids. "Captain, we're detecting an anomaly at coordinates 27 to 1842, called out Navigator Pell, her voice buzzing with unexpected excitement. "It's large. Very large." Trell strode to her station, mandibles clicking with interest. "Natural formation?" "No, sir. It appears to be artificial. The shape is too uniform, and it's reflecting our scanning beams in patterns consistent with processed metals." The bridge fell silent. The Stellar Concorde had encountered many civilizations in their expansion, but finding unknown technology in empty space was always a moment of tension. "Put it on the main display," Trell ordered. The holographic projection shimmered to life, revealing a massive silhouette drifting against the backdrop of distant stars. Even from a distance, its purpose was unmistakable. A warship, but unlike any in the Concorde's records. Its design spoke of power and purpose with sharp angles and massive weapon emplacements along its hull. "Run a comparison with known vessel types," Trell commanded. Science Officer Ven's fingers danced across her console. "No matches in our database, Captain, but there's something—" "Wait." She paused, eyes widening. "The material composition has similarities to artifacts recovered from Sector 12, believed to be of human origin." A collective murmur swept through the bridge. Humans, a species known only through archaeological findings and fragmentary records. A civilization that had apparently reached the stars and then vanished without explanation nearly 3 centuries ago. "Humans?" Trell repeated, his voice lowering. "Are you certain?" "The probability is high, Captain. The alloy composition matches what little we know of their technology." Trell studied the image. If this was indeed a human vessel, it represented the most significant find in decades. The Concorde's historical archives contained precious little about humans, only that they had been bipedal, surprisingly adaptable, and apparently quite adept at warfare before their civilization disappeared. "Prepare a boarding team," he decided. "I want our best scientists and security personnel. We'll investigate directly." 4 hours later, Trell led a team of 12 across the void between their ship and the derelict vessel. Their shuttle docked, with surprising ease at what appeared to be an external airlock. "The design is ingenious," remarked Engineer Clove as they prepared to enter. "The docking mechanisms adapted to our approach despite being centuries old." "Remain alert," warned Military Advisor Mord, a tall, ridge-backed warrior whose species had evolved as apex predators. "We know nothing of human defense systems." The airlock cycled with a hiss, revealing a dark corridor beyond. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness, illuminating a ship interior that seemed frozen in time. Unlike the derelicts they had explored before, there were no signs of battle damage, no emergency evacuations, no indication of what had happened to the crew. "Life support systems appear inactive but intact," reported Ven, consulting her scanner. "No toxic elements detected. Atmosphere is thin but breathable with assistance." They moved deeper into the ship, passing through corridors lined with what appeared to be crew quarters and storage areas. Everything was orderly, as if the crew had simply stepped away momentarily. "It's as if they just left," whispered Clove, examining a workspace where tools remained laid out for use. Trell felt a growing unease. Continued toward the command center. As they navigated the ship's interior, they discovered writing in an unfamiliar script, presumably human language. Fen recorded everything, her scanner working to build a translation framework based on linguistic fragments recovered from other archaeological sites. The command center was a spacious chamber dominated by control stations arranged in concentric circles around a central chair, clearly the captain's position. Dormant screens and panels lined the walls. "Look at this engineering," breathed Clove, running his hand over one console. "Intuitive layout, redundant systems. They built this for efficiency in crisis situations." Junior Technician Lim moved to what appeared to be a minor auxiliary station. curiosity overcoming caution. His three-fingered hand brushed against a panel that suddenly illuminated at his touch. I didn't, he stammered as lights flickered to life throughout the command center. Step back, barked Mord, drawing his weapon. The ship groaned around them as ancient systems awoke from their long slumber. Displays flickered with static before clearing to reveal information in the human script. A deep humming vibrated through the deck plates beneath their feet. Minimal power restored, announced Ven, reading from her scanner. Main systems remain offline, but we have access to some information databases. Trell approached the now active console cautiously. Can you interpret any of this? Ven worked with her translation algorithms. Partially, this appears to be the ship's designation and status. She paused, mandibles twitching as she processed the information. It calls itself the TSV Sentinel. According to these logs, it was the flagship of something called Earth Defense Force. Earth, the human homeworld, murmured Trell. What else? Last log entry dates to, converting to our calendar, approximately 278 years ago. The final command was something called Protocol Olympus. I cannot determine its meaning yet. Mord, who had been scouting the periphery of the command center, called out sharply, Captain, you should see this. In an adjacent chamber, they found a secure door that had partially opened when the power returned. Beyond it lay a corridor leading deeper into the ship's heart, to areas not shown on the basic schematics they'd mapped. This section appears to be heavily shielded, noted Ven. Our scans couldn't penetrate it from outside. The decision to proceed was made with little discussion. This discovery was too significant to leave unexplored. They followed the corridor to a chamber unlike any other on the ship, a circular room with a single platform at its center, upon which rested what appeared to be a stasis pod of some kind. Unlike the rest of the ship, this chamber showed signs of dedicated power, with tiny lights still blinking on its systems. Is that a preservation unit? Asked Clav, approaching cautiously. Ven scanned the pod, her expression shifting to one of shock. Captain, I'm detecting life signs. Extremely faint but present. Impossible, whispered Trell, moving closer to look through the pod's frosted viewport. Through the cloudy surface, they could make out the dim outline of a figure, humanoid, still preserved against time itself. After all these centuries, Mord growled skeptically. No stasis technology can last this long without maintenance. This one has, replied Ven, and according to these readings, whoever or whatever is inside is still alive. Trell stared at the pod, feeling as though he stood at the threshold of something momentous. After centuries of silence, they had not only found a perfectly preserved human warship but potentially a living human as well. Prepare to transfer this pod to our research vessel, he ordered quietly. Whatever secrets it holds, the Concorde must understand them. He looked around at the ship that had survived against all odds and maintained power to this vessel's basic systems. I want to know everything about the Sentinel and why it was left here. Waiting, none of them noticed the subtle change in the ship's background hum, nor the brief flicker of light on a secondary system panel. A silent signal broadcasting into the void, announcing that after centuries of sleep, someone had found what had been so carefully hidden. The awakening had begun. The research vessel Cosmic Insight hummed with activity, as scientists from various species of the stellar Concord gathered around the human stasis pod. Transported from the ghost ship just hours earlier, the ancient device now sat in the center of the main laboratory, surrounded by scanning equipment and curious eyes. Chief Scientist Drell adjusted her optical enhancers, the 6 thin appendages on her head twitching with excitement. After 30 years of studying fragments of human technology, she finally had something intact, and possibly even a living specimen. Remarkable engineering, she commented, running a scanner over the pod's control systems. Power efficiency, beyond anything we've achieved. The cell degradation is minimal despite centuries of operation. Captain Trell stood at the back of the room, watching with arms crossed. Can you open it safely? Military advisor Mord stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the pod. Captain, I must again express my concerns. We know humans were a warrior species. If this is some kind of soldier— Your objection is noted, advisor, Trell interrupted. But this discovery is too significant to ignore. If a living human exists, imagine what we could learn about a civilization that vanished at the height of its development. Drell's assistant, a young scientist named Pax, called out from a nearby console. I think I've decoded their stasis protocol. It's elegant. The pod has a self-contained system that gradually refreshes cellular structures using minimal energy. That's how it lasted so long. Drell moved to examine his findings. Can we access its memory banks without revival? I believe so, Pax answered, connecting a data bridge to the pod's interface. Their information architecture is surprisingly compatible with our systems, almost as if it was designed for— A sharp alarm cut through the air as red lights flashed across the pod's surface. The metal shell began to heat rapidly, and vapor escaped from previously invisible seams. What did you do? Demanded Trell, rushing forward. Nothing, Pax protested, frantically working his console. It's activated some kind of emergency protocol. It thinks the occupant is in danger. Mord drew his weapon and barked orders to the security team. Everyone back, now. The laboratory erupted into chaos as scientists scrambled away from the pod. A countdown appeared on the pod's display in human numerals, quickly translated by the ship's computer. 10 seconds until complete. Revival. We can't stop it, shouted Drell. The process has safeguards. Interruption would kill the occupant. The countdown reached 0. With a hiss of escaping gas, the pod's top section slid open, releasing a cloud of cryogenic vapor that temporarily obscured its contents. As the mist cleared, they saw a figure lying motionless inside, unmistakably human, just as the old records had described. Bipedal, with pale skin and dark hair, wearing a form-fitting black uniform with insignia they couldn't recognize. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then the human's chest rose sharply as it drew in a deep, gasping breath. Its eyes snapped open, startlingly blue against its pale face. In a blur of movement that none of them had time to react to, the human was up and out of the pod, moving with impossible speed for someone who had been in stasis for centuries. Before anyone could process what was happening, the human had disarmed the nearest security officer and stood with the weapon trained on the group, back against the wall. Don't move, the human said in a deep, raspy voice that the translation system struggled to interpret. The language was recognized as an ancient human dialect, but the accent was unfamiliar. Trell raised his hand slowly. We mean you no harm. I am Captain Trell of the Stellar Concord. The human's eyes darted around the room, assessing each alien, species present, the exits, the equipment. His gaze settled on the stolen weapon in his hand, examining it briefly before returning to track the group. What year is it? The human demanded. Drell stepped forward cautiously. By your Earth calendar, approximately year 2587. The human's expression remained controlled, but a flicker of shock passed through his eyes. 300 years, he murmured, almost to himself. Then louder, where are we? What sector? Quadrant 7, Sector 18, replied Trell. Approximately 60 light-years from where we found your vessel. The Sentinel, the human said. Is it intact? Yes, we discovered it drifting. You were the only living thing aboard. Something in the human's posture shifted subtly. A minute. Relaxation that the more observant aliens detected. He lowered the weapon slightly, though still kept it ready. I am Commander Jack, Earth Defense Force, Special Division Omega. Where are the other human ships? The colonies? A heavy silence fell over the room. Trell glanced at Drell, who gave a small nod. Commander, Trell said slowly, according to our historical records, Earth and its colonies fell approximately 300 years ago. There was a cataclysmic event. No human survivors were ever confirmed. Until now, your species was believed extinct. The human, Commander Jack, stared at Trell with an intensity that made the captain's skin prickle. For a moment he feared the human might attack in denial or rage. Instead, Jack closed his eyes briefly, his face a mask of control. "Protocol Olympus," Jack said quietly. "It was activated then." "We found that term in the ship's logs," Drell offered cautiously. "What does it mean?" Jack slowly placed the weapon on a nearby table and stepped away from it, a gesture of trust, albeit a calculated one. "It was our final contingency plan," he explained, his voice steadier now. "When it became clear that Earth would fall, we scattered. Sleeper ships, colony vessels, hidden throughout the galaxy. I was left aboard the Sentinel as guardian in memory." "Guardian of what?" asked Mord, still suspicious. Jack's eyes met the military advisors, "Of humanity's legacy, and its greatest weapon." "Weapon?" Mord tensed again. "Not what you think," Jack replied. "The Sentinel itself is the weapon, and I am its control system." Drell moved closer, professional curiosity overriding caution. "You were linked to the ship somehow?" "Neural integration, experimental. I was the only successful candidate." Jack tapped his temple. "My mind was partially merged with the ship's tactical systems. In emergency situations, I could become the ship, directing all systems simultaneously. With thought-speed reaction times, the aliens exchanged glances, trying to comprehend what he was describing. None of their species had achieved such integration. "Why were you left in stasis?" Trell asked. Jack's expression darkened. "Because what destroyed Earth might return. I was left as both warning system and last defense." "What destroyed Earth?" Drell asked, the scientist in her needing to know. "We called them the Void," Jack answered, his voice dropping. "They weren't like you, physical beings with bodies and ships. They were something else. Something that consumed worlds and turned space itself inside out. We fought them for 10 years before Earth fell." As if on cue, an alert sounded throughout the ship. The communications officer's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, urgent transmission from Outpost Gamma 9 on the edge of the Krill Expanse. They're reporting unusual space-time distortions and loss of contact with 2 scout ships." Jack's head snapped up, eyes suddenly alert and focused. "The Void," he whispered. "They're back." Trell looked at the human with new understanding and growing alarm. This wasn't just a historical discovery anymore. If the human was right, the very threat that had destroyed Earth had returned, and the Concord had just awakened the only being who knew how to fight them. "I need to return to the Sentinel," Jack said, all traces of disorientation gone. "Immediately." For the first time in his career, Captain Trell felt truly afraid of what lay ahead. They had found a ghost ship and awakened its occupant, only to discover that both were keys to a war they hadn't known was coming. The conference room aboard the Celestial Seeker buzzed with tension as Captain Trell assembled his senior officers. Commander Jack sat at the table, his human form drawing curious glances from everyone present. For most, this was their first time, seeing a living human, a species previously known only through historical records and archaeological findings. Reports from 3 more outposts confirmed similar disturbances, reported Communications Officer Leary, her translucent fingers moving across her datapad. Space-time anomalies followed by loss of contact. Pattern matches the disturbance at Outpost Gamma 9. Jack studied the star map projected above the table. His eyes tracked the pattern of incidents with grim recognition. "It's them," he said, quietly. "The same approach pattern they used in the Sol system. They're testing defenses, looking for weaknesses." Military Advisor Mord leaned forward, his ridgeback spines rising slightly in agitation. "You speak of these void creatures, but we have no evidence they even exist. These could be natural phenomena or a known enemy testing new technology." Jack's face remained calm, but his eyes hardened. "I watched them consume Mars in hours, Jupiter's moons in days. I lost my entire family on Earth's final evacuation day." He gestured to the map. "This is exactly how it began before. Small disturbances that your scientists will explain away until it's too late." Trell raised a hand to quiet the growing murmurs. "Commander Jack, tell us everything. What exactly are we facing? Jack stood and approached the star map. We never truly understood what they were. Not biological, not mechanical. Our best scientists believed they existed partially outside normal space-time. He pointed to where the disturbances had been reported. They create tiers, rifts where our reality meets theirs. Through these tiers, they extend what we called tendrils, energy structures that consume matter and energy alike. That's not possible, objected Science Officer Venn. Matter cannot simply disappear from the universe. It doesn't disappear, Jack replied. It's converted into something else, something that fuels their expansion. We tracked exponential growth, patterns. Each world they consumed made them stronger, able to consume more. He turned to face the assembled aliens. Earth wasn't their first target. We found evidence they had consumed at least 3 other civilizations before reaching our solar system. We tried everything. Nuclear weapons, antimatter bombs, even experimental gravity weapons. Nothing worked. Conventional attacks passed through them like they weren't even there. Yet you speak of a weapon, Trell noted. The Sentinel itself, you said. Jack nodded. In our final years, we made a breakthrough. We couldn't attack them physically, but we discovered we could disrupt the connection between their dimension and ours. The Sentinel contains a prototype resonance array designed to collapse their rifts and force them back to their own space-time. If this weapon exists, why did humanity fall? Asked Mord, skepticism evident in his voice. Jack's expression darkened. It came too late. We had one successful test, but the power requirements were enormous. We couldn't produce enough ships with the technology before Earth was surrounded. He paused, memories visibly weighing on him. That's when Protocol Olympus was enacted, a desperate gamble to preserve what remained of humanity. What exactly was Protocol Olympus? Chief Scientist Drell asked, her scientific curiosity overriding. Protocol. A 3-part plan, Jack explained. First, evacuation. Every remaining human loaded onto colony ships with light drives modified for extended jumps beyond known space. Each ship contained a cross-section of human knowledge, genetic samples, and enough cryo-sleeping colonists to establish a viable population. Where were they sent? Asked Trell. Even I don't know. Each ship had randomized coordinates, deliberately, kept secret to prevent anyone from knowing the location of all survivors. The second part was concealment. The ships were designed to remain hidden, automated systems instructed to keep the colonies isolated for at least 2 centuries until the threat had passed. And the third part? Prompted Drell. Insurance, Jack said simply. The Sentinel was hidden as well, with me aboard in stasis integrated with its systems. If the Void ever returned, I was to be awakened to coordinate humanity's defense and reconnect the scattered colonies. Leary's console beeped urgently. Captain, emergency transmission from the research vessel near the human ship. They're detecting energy surges throughout the Sentinel systems. It appears to be powering up on its own. Jack's eyes widened slightly. The awakening protocol. When my stasis pod was activated, it sent a trigger signal to the ship. The Sentinel is preparing itself. Trell studied the human with new intensity. You really believe these Void creatures are returning, don't you? They never left, Jack replied, grimly. They just moved on to easier hunting grounds after consuming most of our solar system, and now they've found their way here. Before anyone could respond, another alert sounded. Captain, Leary reported, her voice tight. We're receiving a distress call from Colony World Taros. They're reporting a massive spatial distortion opening in their upper atmosphere. Energy readings are off the charts. On the main screen, grainy, footage appeared showing a swirling darkness spreading across Taros's blue sky. As they watched, tendrils of what looked like living shadow reached down toward the planet's surface. That's a small one, Jack said quietly. A scout rift. The main force will be larger, much larger. The room fell silent as the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't a historical curiosity anymore. It was a present threat. I need to return to the Sentinel, Jack insisted. Every moment we delay gives them more time to establish a foothold. Captain, Trell looked around at his officers, seeing the mix of fear and determination on their faces. His species had been spacefaring for 8 generations without facing a threat of this magnitude. "What exactly will you do if we return you to your ship?" he asked Jack. "Reconnect to the neural interface. Become the weapon." Jack's voice was steady, his purpose clear. The Sentinel was designed for one pilot, me. My mind was specifically mapped to its systems. I'm the only one who can operate it at full capacity. "And after?" asked Mord. "If you succeed in driving back this threat, what then? Will we have traded one danger for another, a human superweapon with unknown intentions, toward the conquered?" Jack met the military advisor's suspicious gaze directly. 300 years ago, your conquered didn't exist. I have no quarrel with you or any peaceful species. But if humanity still exists out there, scattered and hidden as we planned, I intend to find them, unite them, restore what was lost. Trell considered this carefully. The human before them represented both their greatest hope against this new threat and potentially a new complication in the galactic order. If human colonies had survived and could be reunited with their lost military technology, a final alert interrupted his thoughts. The footage from Taros now showed entire sections of the colony vanishing into the expanding darkness. "Captain," Jack said, his voice lowered, "I understand your concerns, but right now that colony is experiencing exactly what Earth did, and it's only the beginning." Trell stood. Decision made. "Prepare a shuttle. Commander Jack will return to the Sentinel immediately. Military Advisor Mord, assemble a security team to accompany him." He turned to Jack. "We will help you activate your weapon, Commander, but understand that the Stellar Concord will be watching closely." Jack nodded once, accepting the terms without comment. As the meeting disbanded and preparations began, he paused by the viewport, looking out at the stars. "I'm coming," he whispered, though none of the aliens could hear him. "If any of you are still out there, I'm coming." For the first time in 3 centuries, humanity's greatest weapon was about to rejoin the fight, and the galaxy would never be the same. The shuttle approached the Sentinel with Commander Jack seated in the forward section, his eyes fixed on the massive human warship. Even after 3 centuries, the sight of it stirred something deep within him. Pride, sorrow, purpose. Behind him sat Captain Trell, military advisor Mord, and a security team of 6 armed Concord soldiers. "It's already powering up," Jack observed as they drew closer. "Look at the engine sections." True enough. A dull blue glow now emanated from the previously dark propulsion systems. Lights flickered across the hull as ancient systems reactivated one by one. "How is that possible?" asked Trell. "No one is aboard to operate it. The neural link works both ways," Jack explained. "Part of my consciousness remains connected to the ship's core systems even when I'm physically separated. My awakening triggered its revival protocol." The shuttle docked smoothly at the main airlock. As they prepared to disembark, Mord stepped forward, blocking Jack's path. "Before we proceed," the military advisor said firmly, "I want to be clear. At the first sign that you're not being truthful about this threat, or if you attempt to use this vessel against the Concord, my team will not hesitate." Jack met the alien's gaze steadily. "Your people are already dying, advisor. I suggest you focus on the real enemy," Trell intervened before tensions could escalate further. "We're wasting time. Move out." The group entered the Sentinel, finding it transformed from their previous visit. Emergency lighting illuminated the corridors, and the hum of machinery filled the air as life support and navigation systems came online. Jack moved with purpose, leading them deep into the ship. "Where exactly are we going?" Trell asked as they descended into sections they hadn't explored before. "The integration chamber," Jack replied. "The ship's true command center." After passing through several security checkpoints that opened automatically as Jack approached, they reached a large circular room unlike anything the aliens had seen before. At its center stood what appeared to be a raised platform surrounded by curved, translucent panels. Cables and conduits ran from the platform to massive machinery embedded in the walls and ceiling. "This is it," Jack said, approaching the platform. The neural interface. It looks painful, observed Trell, noting the menacing connectors that hung above the platform. Jack smiled faintly. It is, but necessary. He turned to face the aliens. Once I connect, I'll have complete control of all the Sentinel systems. The ship is equipped with weapons beyond anything in your arsenal, Captain. I need your word that you won't interfere once we begin. Trell considered this carefully. You have my word that we won't interfere with your defense against the Void, but I cannot allow unrestricted use of such firepower in conquered space. Fair enough, Jack conceded. Now, I need access to your latest intelligence on the Void incursions. Trell instructed one of his officers to provide their data pad. Jack studied the reports quickly, his expression growing grimmer with each swipe. It's happening faster than last time, he muttered. They've evolved, adapted. He handed the pad back. We need to move quickly. The colony at Taros is already lost, but we might save Outpost Krell 6 if we hurry. Without further discussion, Jack stepped onto the platform. The machinery around him hummed to life, responding to his presence. You may want to step back, he advised, removing his outer jacket to reveal ports embedded along his spine and at the base of his skull, technological implants that merged seamlessly with his flesh. The aliens retreated to the edge of the room, watching with a mixture of fascination and horror as Jack activated the system. The connectors descended, aligning with his implants. His body tensed as they locked into place with mechanical precision. Neural integration commencing, announced an automated voice in the human language, now translated by the aliens' devices. Synapse mapping in progress. Jack's face contorted in pain, but he remained silent as the machine connected directly to his nervous system. The translucent panels around him filled with cascading data, displaying ship schematics, weapon systems, and tactical analyses. 80% integration, 90% full neural integration achieved. Welcome back, Commander. Jack's eyes snapped open, but they were different now. Pupils expanded and irises glowing with the same blue light that powered the ship. When he spoke, his voice resonated strangely, as if coming simultaneously from his body and the ship itself. Sentinel systems online, weapons at 89% capacity, FTL drive operational. Trell stepped forward cautiously. Commander Jack? Jack's gaze focused on him, seeming to look both at and through the alien captain. I am here, Captain, but also everywhere throughout the ship. I can see every corridor, every system. I can feel the void of space around us. He paused, his expression shifting. And I can sense them, the void. They're spreading faster than I feared. The ship shuddered around them as engines powered up to full capacity. What's happening? Demanded Mord, hand moving to his weapon. I'm bringing all systems online, Jack replied, his voice eerily calm despite the obvious strain on his body. And I've detected something else. Something I didn't expect to find after all this time. What? Asked Trell. A signal. Encoded on frequencies. Only human ships would use. It's faint, distorted by distance and time. But it's there. For just a moment, raw emotion broke through Jack's machine-enhanced demeanor. We survived. Some of us at least. Before Trell could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the ship. One of the display panels shifted to show a massive spatial distortion forming near Outpost Krell 6. They're opening another rift, Jack announced, his focus instantly shifting. Larger than the one at Taros. This isn't a scout force. It's an invasion. The ship's engines roared to full power, the deck vibrating beneath their feet. Prepare for FTL jump, Jack said. I'm taking us to Krell 6. Wait, Trell protested. My crew is still aboard the Celestial Seeker. We need to coordinate with the conquered fleet. There's no time, Jack replied. But you're right about coordination. Open a channel to your flagship. Trell used his communicator to establish contact with his first officer aboard the Celestial Seeker. This is Commander Jack of the Earth Defense Force, Jack announced, his voice carrying through the link. I am transmitting tactical data on the enemy you're facing. Forward it to all conquered vessels immediately. Standard weapons will be ineffective against the void entities. Concentrate on evacuating all personnel from Krell 6 and maintaining a perimeter at these coordinates. The data streamed from the Sentinel to the conquered ship, faster than their systems could normally process. "We jump in 30 seconds, Jack informed them. Any of your people still aboard should brace for acceleration." Mord stepped forward, his security team tensing behind him. "This isn't what we agreed to. We were to observe, not participate in, a combat jump without authorization." Jack's glowing eyes fixed on the military advisor. "You wanted proof of the threat. You're about to get it." His voice softened slightly. "I understand your caution, advisor, but right now your people at Krell 6 have minutes, perhaps seconds, before they experience what my world did. I can save them if you let me." The tension in the room was palpable as Mord and Jack stared at each other. Finally, Trell broke the silence. "Do it, Commander. Take us to Krell 6. Mord turned to protest, but his words were cut short as the Sentinel lurched into FTL speed, its ancient engines, performing beyond anything the Conquered had achieved. The human ghost ship, dormant for centuries, was now fully awake, and with it humanity's greatest weapon had returned to the fight. As the stars blurred around them, Jack closed his eyes, feeling the ship as an extension of his own body. For 300 years he had slept, waiting for this moment. The void had returned, but so had he. And somewhere out there the scattered children of Earth were waiting to be found. The Sentinel emerged from FTL with a thunderous roar of engines, arriving at Outpost Krell 6 to a scene of unfolding horror. A massive swirling vortex of darkness hung in space near the small research station, pulsing with unnatural energy. Dark tendrils had already wrapped around the outpost's main structure, parts of it dissolving where the shadowy appendages made contact. 3 Concord defense vessels fired desperately at the phenomenon, their weapons passing harmlessly through the darkness. "Just as I remembered," Jack said, his voice resonating throughout the integration chamber. Through his neural link, he directed the ship's sensors to analyze the spatial rift. "The void entity is still partially in its own dimension. Conventional weapons can't touch it." Captain Trell stared at the view screen in shock. Even military, Advisor Mord seemed stunned into silence by the scale of the threat. "Can you stop it?" Trell asked simply. Jack didn't answer immediately. His eyes, still glowing with the blue light of the ship's systems, scanned rapidly through data only he could see. "The resonance array needs time to charge," he finally replied. 2 minutes at full power. We need to keep it from completing its consumption of the outpost." Without waiting for a response from the aliens, Jack directed the Sentinel forward. The ancient human warship moved with surprising grace, its hull illuminating with energy as weapon systems charged. "What are you doing?" demanded Mord, watching as they approached the monstrous darkness. "Getting its attention," Jack replied. The Sentinel's forward batteries opened fire. Instead of conventional projectiles or energy beams, the weapons released pulses of blue-white light that seemed to distort the space they passed through. When they struck the void entity, something remarkable happened. The darkness recoiled, tendrils withdrawing from the damaged outpost. "It worked," breathed Trell. "Temporarily," Jack cautioned. "I've disrupted its dimensional anchor points, but the effect won't last. I need to draw it away from the outpost while the main array charges." He opened a communication channel to the conquered defense vessels. "This is Commander Jack aboard the human vessel Sentinel. Evacuate all personnel from Krell 6 immediately. Do not engage the entity directly." The Sentinel continued firing precisely targeted pulses, creating a pattern that forced the void entity to respond. Like a predator distracted from its original prey, the swirling darkness turned toward them, tendrils reaching hungrily for this new threat. "It recognizes the ship," Jack observed, a hint of grim satisfaction in his voice. "It remembers what we did to its kind in the Sol system." The view screen showed the conquered vessels launching evacuation shuttles from the outpost. The Sentinel adjusted position, placing itself between the entity and the fleeing civilians. "Resonance array at 60% charge," Jack announced. His body tensed in the neural interface, sweat beading on his forehead as he coordinated dozens of ship systems simultaneously. The entity is fully focused on us now. It's attempting to create a dimensional lock. What does that mean? Asked Trell. It's trying to pull us into its space where our physical laws don't apply. Jack's voice strained as he fought both the ship systems and the alien entity. I've seen entire battleships disappear this way, but that's exactly what we need. We want it fully engaged with us when the array fires. The ship shuddered violently as dark energy washed over its hull. Warning signals flashed across displays as systems struggled under the assault. Hull integrity at 70%, Jack reported. Shields failing in sections 3 through 7. Mord stepped closer to the interface platform, his earlier suspicion replaced with grudging respect. Your ship is taking damage that would have destroyed our vessels instantly. The Sentinel was built for this fight, Jack replied, after we lost 3 fleets learning what doesn't work against them. Another violent shudder rocked the ship. A support beam crashed down in a far corner of the chamber, barely missing 2 of Mord's security team. 85% charge, Jack announced. Almost there. The view screen showed the entity now fully encircling the Sentinel. It's dark, mass pulsing with malevolent purpose. Spaces where the tendrils touched the hull began to dissolve, metal and composite materials simply vanishing. It's breaching the outer layers, warned Trell, watching sections of the ship disappear into nothingness. Jack's face contorted with effort, blood trickling from his nose as the neural interface pushed his mind and body to their limits. 95%, redirecting remaining power to the array. The lights throughout the ship dimmed as energy was channeled to the weapon. For a moment, it seemed as if the Sentinel might be consumed before it could strike back. Full charge achieved, Jack announced suddenly. Resonance array firing now. The ship pulsed with blinding light, waves of energy radiating outward in precisely calculated patterns. The void entity's darkness seemed to fracture where the energy waves intersected, creating geometric patterns of disruption throughout its mass. A high-pitched wail, somehow audible despite the vacuum of space, emanated from the creature. "It's working," Trell exclaimed. The view screen showed the entity convulsing, its tendrils withdrawing as the resonance patterns forced portions of it back into its own dimension. With a final surge of power from the Sentinel, the rift began to collapse upon itself, the swirling darkness retreating through an ever-shrinking portal until, with a final flash of light, it vanished entirely. Silence fell over the integration chamber. Jack hung limply in the neural interface, the blue glow in his eyes flickering. "Interface disengaging," announced the ship's automated system. "Pilot vital signs critical." The connectors retracted from Jack's implants and he collapsed onto the platform. Trell rushed forward, catching the human before he could hit the floor. "Get a medical team," he ordered one of Mord's soldiers, who raced from the room. Jack's eyes fluttered open, now their normal blue rather than the machine-enhanced glow. "Did it work?" he asked weakly. "Yes," Trell confirmed. "The entity is gone. You saved the outpost and everyone aboard it." A faint smile crossed Jack's face before his expression turned serious again. "It was only one, a scout like I said. There will be more, larger ones. But we can fight them now," Mord said, stepping forward. "Your weapon works." Jack shook his head slightly. "This ship alone isn't enough. We need more. We need—" His voice trailed off as he tried to sit up. "The signal I detected, we need to follow it." "You need medical attention first," insisted Trell. "No time," Jack argued, though his weakened state undermined his authority. "Every moment we wait, the void regroups, learns, adapts." With visible effort, he pulled himself to his feet, leaning heavily on a nearby console. "I need to find what's left of humanity. Together, we might stand a chance." 3 days later, the Sentinel approached the coordinates Jack had calculated from the mysterious signal. Captain Trell had decided to accompany the human, bringing the Celestial Seeker alongside as escort. The Stellar Concord High Command, after reviewing the evidence from Krell 6, had granted them authority to investigate. Jack stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, now partially recovered from the neural strain. His connection to the ship remained, but less intense outside the integration chamber. "We're here," he announced, studying the star system before them. The signal originated from the third planet. As they approached the world, a blue-green sphere reminiscent of ancient Earth, scanners detected artificial structures on the surface. "A colony," breathed Trell, standing beside Jack. "As you predicted." The Sentinel's communications array picked up transmissions from the planet, speaking in a language that made Jack's eyes widen with recognition. "English," he said softly. "Altered, evolved over centuries, but definitely derived from English." As they established orbit, the colony's modest defense system activated, a handful of small ships rising from the surface to meet them. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer. "But their technology is primitive by comparison to the Sentinel." "Open a channel," Jack requested. A voice crackled through the speakers, cautious and suspicious. "Unidentified vessels, you have entered Olympus colony space. Identify yourselves immediately." Jack stepped forward, emotion evident in his voice as he responded. "This is Commander Jack, Earth Defense Force, aboard the TSV Sentinel. We come in peace, under Protocol Olympus." A long silence followed before the voice returned, now trembling, slightly. That's impossible. Protocol Olympus is just a myth from the ancestor stories." "Not a myth," Jack replied gently. "A promise. We scattered to survive, but always with the intention to reunite when the time was right." He paused, gathering himself. "I've come to fulfill that promise. The enemy that drove us from Earth has returned, but this time, we'll face them together." As the colony ships escorted them toward the planet, Jack turned to Captain Trell. "This is just the beginning. There will be more colonies, dozens, perhaps hundreds if the evacuation plan succeeded, each with pieces of what we once were." "And when you find them all?" asked Trell. "What then?" Jack looked out at the stars, his expression both determined and hopeful. "Then humanity returns to the stars not as refugees, but as defenders. The Void destroyed our world, but they couldn't destroy our spirit. Now they'll learn what happened.